Welcome to week 3 of the workshop. It's really great to see all of you here, especially everybody that's been coming for the last couple of weeks. Oh, hold on one second. All right, we should be good now. All right, if we could just start off with a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer, then we'll get right into this. We got quite a bit to cover today. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. All right, just for those of you in the room today, in person, we are going to be doing a small part of the raffle, about half of what we're going to raffle off with your raffle tickets after this today. So I'm going to do my best to get us done right at 4 o'clock. And then if you want to stay, we'll spend about 10 minutes doing the raffle. You don't have to be here. We have your name and number on the ticket, so it's totally up to you. But just letting you guys know we're going to raffle off some prizes today that are in the back. That's just for people in the room. All right, so picking up where we left off last week, like I said, we got quite a bit to cover. I'm going to finish up the last part of the 4th step today, and then we're going to get through steps 5 through 9 as well, so quite a lot. We left off on page 67, and we were finishing up the 4th column of the resentment inventory, the turnaround. I'm just going to quickly review the resentment inventory across the board, all 4 columns, and then move right into the next section, which is about fear. So if you have the packet from last time, or if you don't, you can follow along on page 65 in your book. The first 3 columns are there, and then I'll talk about the 4th one. So the big book describes a 4-column inventory for the resentments. The first column is, I like to say the questions get harder. The first column's all the names of the people, institutions, and principles with whom I'm angry with, right? So what am I mad at? What have I been holding on to for a really long time? Or maybe it's new and I need to get rid of that too. In your packet, I gave you an example, and I will just go through this one. This was my original 4th step that I did years ago. I have done a 4th step every year since, sometimes more than one, because as I mentioned last time, a business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke, and to me that means I need to take regular inventory. But the example that I gave to y'all is my father. So I wrote down my dad's name in column 1. In column 2, I used bullet points, just like it has on page 65 in the big book. The example there is short to the point statements. Not the world's largest victim impact statement where I write out a novel about how all these people did all these horrible things to me for so long. Keep it to the point. Because the main purpose of this resentment inventory is to get to column 4 where I can find out what my part is, and that's the part that I can get free of. So in column 2, for my father, I wrote, he was always drunk, he was emotionally unavailable, cheated on my mother, showed me how to be a criminal, and he was much more of a friend than he ever was a father to me. And that was my feelings toward my dad when I first came into AA. I will say since then I got free of that. He's since passed away, but I got free of all that. And today when I think about my dad, I think about the times we played golf together, and I think about him coaching my Little League team. And I think about how much he loved me and how much I loved him. But this is where I was at once upon a time. So column 2, why am I angry? Column 3, how does it affect me? The book gives us 7 areas: self-esteem, security, ambitions, personal relations, sex relations, pride, and money, my pocketbook. So what I do is I take those things from column 2, those items, those bullet points, and I use these 3 magical words that the big book outlines on page 65: hurt, threaten, or interfere. So when my dad was always drunk, did it hurt, threaten, or interfere with my self-esteem? Yes. My security? Yes. My ambitions? Yes. My personal relationship with my father? Yes. Sex relation? Didn't have that with him. Pride? Pride, yes. And did it affect my money? Yes, him and I were in business together, and it drastically affected both of our money. And I do that for each bullet point, and I go across. And as I illustrated to you guys last time, when I look at this paper, it starts to spiral out. And I have all these different areas that are affected of my life. And I have 5 bullet points from my father, each one affected at a minimum 5 areas of my life. So if you do the math on that, my father is affecting over 25 different areas of my life. And my original 4-step list had over 100 names on it. That's thousands of areas of my life that I was blocked off from God by all these resentments, because that's what the big book is trying to tell me. This stuff is keeping me from having a real connection with my higher power, because if my head's full of all this hate and this anger and this guilt and this shame, how can I possibly have a relationship with anyone, including God? And that's been my experience. So what do I do about it? I get to column 4, and the big book outlines column 4 on pages 66 and 67, which is where we finished off with last time. 66 tells me all the ways I'm going to die if I don't do this. 67 gives me a couple prayers, the sick man's prayer and the angry man's prayer. what I can do to get in the right mindset, right? Like, these are sick people. I had to realize that. My father, very spiritually sick person. He was an alcoholic and a drug addict, just like me. Very spiritually sick person. Spiritually sick people do spiritually sick things. That's what I had to come to terms with, right? God, this is a sick man. Please show me how I can be helpful. God, please save me from being angry. That's the prayers that I say, and I get in the right mindset, and I start to see these resentments are dominating me. It's not doing me any good to be mad at this man anymore. What can I do about it? So I get to column 4, and I ask myself the 5 questions that are outlined on page 67. Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Where was I self-seeking? Where was I afraid? Where was I to blame? Put the wrongdoings of others out the window completely, and I think about my own mistakes. So when my dad was always drunk, was I selfish? No, that was just the truth. He always was. Was I dishonest? No, again, that was the truth, right? Was I self-seeking? Well, I've learned a little bit about that one later. I didn't write it in the packet, but the way I see it today, the way I would have been self-seeking was I wanted attention, and he didn't give it to me. He was too busy being drunk, but I wanted attention. So selfishly and self-seeking, I wanted attention that I didn't get, right? But this 4th one, where was I afraid? And what I wrote in the packet was, I was afraid to talk to him about it, man. I never told the man that I didn't like that he was always drunk. I was afraid to tell him that, right? I didn't want to talk to him. That's on me. If I don't have a conversation with him and tell him, hey, man, I don't appreciate that you're always drunk. It really bothers me, and I'm afraid to do that, and I'm living in fear. How can I expect anything to ever change, right? I got to do my part in that. And then the biggest thing of all is I completed the cycle, and I became a drunk myself. So at the time I'm writing this resentment inventory, I'm the exact same person that I don't like, right? Everything about him I could say about myself, right? So I'm a hypocrite. Where was I to blame? I became a drunk, just like my dad. I'm mad at the same person that I became. So, and what do I do with that 4th column? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about this as we move forward into the relationship inventory. But I see all this stuff that I've done wrong. Pretty good idea is let's ask God for help with that. It says, when I saw my faults, I listed them. I'm on page 67. I placed them before me in black and white. I admitted my wrongs honestly, and I was willing to set matters straight. So what the big book just said is, when I do this 4th column, I might start to see some things that I need to make amends for. It's the first time it kind of introduces the concept, the idea of amends. And we'll obviously get into that in detail today in step 9. But a lot of that stuff comes from my 4-step resentment inventory. Okay, moving on. Now, right into fear. Big one. The second of the 3rd inventories that the big book outlines is fear. This one's a lot less complex than the resentment inventory, but there's some really powerful stuff on these next couple pages. The last paragraph on page 67 says, notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties of Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. So I have to ask myself that question. Has my fear set in motion trains of circumstances I felt I didn't deserve? I just gave you one with my dad, right? My fear of talking to the man about how he hurt me and affected me set in a train and created a circumstance where I hated him for 20 years, right? And I would have to put on a happy face and pretend like it wasn't as bad as it was. And sometimes it came to blows. Sometimes it came to arguments, like really horrible things happened, right? And it all can be traced back to my fear. I was afraid of the man. I was afraid to talk to him. And I was afraid to be vulnerable and tell him exactly how I felt, too. And I can actually apply that to a lot of people in my life. Then the next sentence tells me what I've been doing wrong, right? But didn't I, myself, set the ball rolling? Right? Book's going to suggest something here. Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. Now it gives me the instructions for the fear inventory. It's really simple. It's only 2 columns. They're listed in the packet from last time, but if you weren't here and you don't have it, really simply, column 1, what is my fear, right? It says I reviewed my fears thoroughly. I put them on paper, so I write down what my fears are. And fears can be a lot of things, and I ask God to show me all the things that I'm afraid of. Be honest with myself. Maybe go through that resentment inventory and look how many times I wrote fear in the 3rd column or wrote fear in the 4th column, right? Anything related to my ambitions or my self-esteem or my security, there's probably some fear in there. And in the 4th column, there's probably a lot of fear, if I'm being honest with myself. All right, so what are my fears? I write them down. And then it says, even though I had no resentment in connection with them. So they can be fears that don't show up on my resentment inventory, or they can be fears that are part of that, either way. And then it says, I asked myself why I had them. right? So what is the fear? Why do I have it? An example, right? I wrote it in the packet from last time. I have a fear of rejection, right? Why do I have a fear of rejection? Well, I've experienced it before and it doesn't feel good. That's why, right? I don't like the way of feeling rejected. I don't like the feeling of getting rejected, so I'm afraid of it. Somebody pointed out to me once, and I'll share this with you, said, Ryan, it's very likely that if you have the fear of something, you also have the fear about the opposite of it. So consider that as I'm writing my fears list, right? I have a fear of rejection, but then I also have a fear of commitment. Because once I'm committed to it, then I set myself up to be rejected down the line, or I'm afraid I have all these things I have to do now that I have this thing that I thought that I wanted in the first place. So if I have a fear of rejection, I probably have a fear of commitment, right? I had a lot of fears. Today, my fear kind of lives in two buckets. You might have heard these in the rooms before. I'm afraid of losing something that I have, and I'm afraid of not getting something that I want. And I can kind of break everything down into those two buckets today, but that's through a lot of work, a lot of doing a lot of fourth steps that I've got to that place. But initially, I need to look at what all my fears are and just be honest with myself and ask God to show me what they are. It says self-reliance was as good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Now, these next two paragraphs, as I've been saying throughout this whole workshop, there are certain pages and certain things that I do and read every single day. These next two paragraphs are right at the top of that list. These two paragraphs provide me with so much power and inspiration and connection to my higher power, which I choose to call God. And I'm just going to read them and consider what it's saying here. So it just told me self-reliance, self-confidence is my problem, right? The big book's been trying to get me to this place this whole time. My selfishness, my self-centeredness, this is the problem. So how about this statement? Perhaps there's a better way, Ryan. We think so. For I am now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. I trust infinite God rather than my finite self. I'm in the world to play the role he assigns, just to the extent that I do as I think he would have me, and humbly rely upon him, does he, God, enable me to match my calamity with serenity. So God will match my problems with serenity if I fully trust and rely upon him. That's what I get from that paragraph. I'm in the world to play the role he assigns, a continuation of the third step, right? I'm the actor playing the actor now, not the actor playing the director. God's the director, he's the principal, he's the father. I'm the child, agent, and actor. Right? I'm here to play the role he assigns. Continuing on, I never apologize to anyone for depending upon my creator. I can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. The irony in that is I used to laugh at people. I was the guy that was laughing, right? I thought people were weak if they believed in God. Now I'm the guy that believes in God. This program's powerful. I can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it's the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. That's pretty cool. If I have faith, I have courage. All men of faith have courage. And women. All men and women of faith have courage. They trust their God. I never apologize for God. Listen to this instruction. Instead, I let God, him, demonstrate through me what he, God, can do. Take that into your life every day. Today, God, please let me be a demonstration of what you can do today. Not what I'm capable of, not what my ideas are. I'm going to let God demonstrate through me what he can do today. I'm going to see where that leads me. Now I get an instruction for the fears, right? I just wrote this fear inventory, and we get to the bottom of this paragraph, and it gives me a prayer about what I'm supposed to do with my fears. And it's really simple. I ask him to remove my fear and direct my attention to what he would have me be. At once, I commence to outgrow fear. So if I find myself in fear, if I find myself acting in fear, if it's a problem for me, which fear is one of the four things that's going to show up on the 10th and 11th step, which we're going to get into next week, but it's a daily thing that the big book's going to suggest might happen. I say this prayer. God, please remove my fear of rejection and direct my attention to what you would have me be. God, please remove my fear of economic insecurity and direct my attention to what you would have me be. God, please remove my fear of my boss, who I hate. I'm trying to get free of that resentment, but please remove my fear of him so that I can do my job today. Show me what you would have me be. All right? So, the fear inventory is a good way for me to look at the things that are probably crippling me. Right? These fears are really dangerous. And if I'm motivated by fear, it's probably because I'm in self-will and I need to get into God's will. And how do I do that? I ask God for help. Right? I ask God for help. My job is to see what's happening. My job is to acknowledge these things. My job is to be aware of them. If I had the power to remove them, I would have just done it a long time ago. I don't have that power, and I need God's help for that. That's why this book gives me prayers. It gives me these paragraphs to inspire me. And this is why I read page 68 every single day, because I need to remind myself exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, right? I'm supposed to let God demonstrate through me what he can do, not the other way around. And the other way around would kind of look like, let me do what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to ask God to bail me out when I screw it up. Anybody ever done that before? So very cool. All right, so we got 2 of the 3 inventories now, right? Now we're going to move into this last one. These next 3 pages, I will tell you what, highly underutilized in my experience in the program. A lot of people associate the 4-step with fear and resentments. This last inventory has a series of questions. It has a series of instructions. It has ideas about meditation. It has so much powerful stuff that I could use on a daily basis. And I'm going to walk you through it. Before I do, I will say the first part of this says now about sex. I have come to realize that I can apply the instructions on the next 3 pages to any relationship in my life, sexual or otherwise. I can apply this to my relationship with my coworkers, my family, my friends, my AA people, my sponsees, my sponsor, whatever. Apply the ideas in these pages to relationships and see what happens for you. My experience is very powerful. So it says now about sex, and again, I would say now about relationships in general for me. Many of us need an overhauling there. Understatement of the century, right? Anybody have relationship problems when they came into Alcoholics Anonymous? Or after they've been here for a while even? But above all, try to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off track. Here I find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. It says, one set of voices cry that sex is the lust of our lower nature, a basic necessity of procreation. Then I have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. And again, I can replace all that with relationships and kind of apply the same logic, right? Like relationships can be the root of a lot of problems, right? And I can get a lot of hysterical thinking or advice around relationships, right? You need to do this in your relationship if you want to be happy, right? You need to stay away from this if you want to be happy, right? Different things. And we're going to get a very specific one here in a second. It says they think they did not have enough of it, or isn't the right kind. They see the significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. So those are examples of extreme thinking or advice, right? Like I either got to go one extreme or the other, kind of like no sex at all, or go out there and just get after it, right? Like those are both kind of extreme examples of advice. Or don't have a relationship at all, or go have a relationship with 20 people. Do whatever you want, man. So anyway, the idea is I'm avoiding some hysterical thinking and advice and understanding that exists when it comes to this really difficult topic. So now the big book gives me some very, very, very specific instructions. And I'm going to preface this by saying there is a lot of stuff in Alcoholics Anonymous that has happened in the last 90 years. And these next 2 sentences are maybe some of the most controversial that I'm going to talk about in these 4 weeks. And I'm just going to try to tell you what the big book says versus what you might hear in a meeting. It says, we want to stay out of this controversy, as in stay out of relationships. And it tells me I do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct, right? So I am not the relationship therapist, and I am not here to tell people what they're supposed to do in relationships, and I certainly am not here to tell them what they need to do about their sex conduct. Now, the reason I say that, and it's a tough one, and what I'm about to say is going to ruffle some feathers, because it does every time. But I'm just trying to take you through what the book said. The book said stay out of sex conduct, stay out of relationships. Anyone ever heard no relationships for the first year? Or stay out of relationships for 5 years, or don't do this for this amount of time? Again, I'm just going to tell you, what did the big book just say? And what is that idea? My experience, it's a much more powerful thing for someone to come to that conclusion on their own. Do their inventory, ask God for help, let God be the judge. If God's telling me that I probably need to stay away from this crazy part of my life, then I should do it. But some people are more than healthy enough early on in sobriety to go out and have a relationship. The reason I can say that is because I'm one of them. I had a relationship 3 months into my sobriety. We didn't kill each other, right? It ended up being a great learning experience for me. It was something I absolutely believe that God intended for me to do, was to get in that relationship and learn that I needed to change a lot about myself if I was ever going to have a successful relationship, even in sobriety. So again, I'm not here to tell people what they're supposed to do. I'm just here to talk about what the big book says. And the big book says, Ryan, you are not to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. So that's what I do. I stay out of it. I don't tell my sponsees don't get in a relationship. I don't tell them to get in a relationship. I encourage them to ask God for help, apply the spiritual principles of this book. And, I'm happy to share my experience with them, right? But at the end of the day, I'm not going to tell them not to do something. And that's just my experience. All right, it says I'd hardly be human if I didn't. What can I do about them, right? So it's telling me my relationship problems. It says I review my conduct over the years past. Now we're going to get the third inventory, the relationship inventory. And as I said, these 9 questions that are going to happen here can be used for any relationship in my life. And they're powerful. Another really powerful tool is they can help me get to column 4 if I'm struggling to see my part in the resentment inventory. Run through these 9 questions about anybody that you're struggling with in that 4th column and see if this doesn't help you get there. So the 9 questions: where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Where was I inconsiderate? Whom had I hurt? Did I unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where was I at fault? And the big one, right? Ryan, what should you have done instead? And a lot of times it's as simple as, maybe I should have asked God for help before I made that decision, right? Maybe I should have consulted anyone instead of just acting on my extreme emotional natures. A couple things in there that I like to point out. Think about the second series of 3 questions: jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness. There's a lot of ways to do that indirectly. Like, imagine if your significant other was in the room, would you be behaving the same way that you are if she wasn't, right? Or would you be saying the same thing about somebody if they were in the room versus if they're not? There's a lot of ways to arouse jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness, not just in myself, but in others about somebody with my conduct. So I need to consider that in relationships. Am I talking crap about my coworker behind my back to everybody else in the office? Think that arouses some jealousy, bitterness, or suspicion in the workplace? It's definitely possible, right? Whom had I hurt? That's a huge one. Anybody got kids? Right? Anybody got kids? Imagine the impact of your relationship with their mother or father, if it's whatever way that goes, or how you behave in front of them and what that impact might have on the kids. Whom had I hurt could also include, I'll use the workplace example again, right? If I'm having a tiff with somebody at the workplace, do you think it's possible that it's hurting some other people in that workplace, right? Especially if I'm in a position of, management, or if I'm in charge of a department, right? And I'm, battling with a coworker. Do you think it's possible that some people under me or some people above me even are being hurt by that relationship? So part of getting out of selfish and self-centeredness is not just thinking about me and maybe the direct person, but kind of thinking a little bigger and saying, maybe my actions are hurting a lot more people than I realize. I need to ask God to show me that. Show me who I've hurt. That'll help with amends, by the way, too. It says, I got this all down paper and I looked at it, right? Now it's going to tell me what I'm supposed to do with this, right? In this way, I tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for my future sex life or my future relationships, right? So I have all this stuff I just listed, all these character defects, all these things I've been doing wrong. So a really logical conclusion would be, what do I do with this? And I'm going to try to shape a sane and sound ideal, right? Instead of this crazy idea, whatever I've been working with on my own power for a long time. I subject each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not, right? Was I really doing it with selfless motives, or did I have some other motives, behind that? And the next page is going to go into detail about motives. It says, I asked God to mold my ideals and help me live up to them. I remember always that my sex powers, my relationship powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. So it just told me to help have God mold some ideals for me. So what I do with that list is I take that list from the relationship inventory, identify some things that are not ideal, like my selfishness, my ability to arouse jealousy, right? My dishonesty, my self-centeredness, my impatience, my intolerance, whatever it is. And then I take those and I ask God to show me a better way. And then I use those every day in prayer. And I have this list of ideals, right? So if I'm being really dishonest in every relationship, God, please show me how to be honest in every relationship that I have today. If my problem is selfishness, well, God, please show me how to be selfless to other people today. God, please show me how to bring my relationship with you into every relationship that I have, right? Let me bring you in for once, right? Instead of just Ryan's idea today. Whatever the ideal is, I ask God to mold it and help me live up to it. It's a really cool instruction to take forward and maybe make some change in my life. That's what the steps are about, right? a psychic change, a whole new way of looking at the world and doing things, this is a really good instruction to do that. It says, whatever my ideal turns out to be, I must be willing to grow toward. There's one of those musts, right? I have to be willing to grow towards a new ideal. Because if I write all this stuff down about my resentments, my fears, and my relationships, and then I go out and do the same thing again, what's that doing, right? The idea is, let me change. Ryan, you need to change. That's what an amend is, by the way. Amend means to change. I must be willing to make amends where I've done harm. Second time it's going to introduce that idea of amends, provided that I do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, I treat sex as I would any other problem. Now listen to this. The big book has 3 instructions directly related to meditation in the first 164 pages, and here's the first one. This is a direct instruction for meditation to do daily. It says, in meditation, I ask God what I should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if I want it. So take these relationship problems into meditation every day, ask God for help, see what happens. The book just said the right answer will come if I want it, right? If I really want to change, if I'm really willing to change and be a better person in all my relationships today, and I'm really willing to let God in, I think he might be able to help me out with that. But if I'm not willing and I just kind of, wrote this stuff down and I'm still planning to do my deal, chances are, repeating the same experiments, I'm probably going to get the same results I've been getting. But if I want something better, I need God to help me. Now, God alone can judge my sex situation. That's a powerful statement. Counsel with others is often desirable, so there you go. Talk to your sponsor about it. I'm not saying don't talk to your sponsor about relationships. Like the Big Witch has said, counsel with others is often desirable, but I let God be the final judge. I realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. I avoid hysterical thinking or advice. Right? So whatever happens, right? I'm going to ask God, is this what you would have me do? Like, do you not want me to be in this relationship for the next year? Or do you want me to take some time off? And I have both sides of the coin. I told you I did get in a relationship in the first year of my life, but after that ended, I asked God to show me what he had me do, and he kept me on my own for 2 years. So I spent 2 years in sobriety with God's help, learning how to be self-sufficient, learning how to be okay, learning how not to be codependent is what it really was, right? And that was a lesson that I learned with God's help and applying the spiritual principles in this book, right? And that was way more powerful than someone just telling me I can't do something. Because I've been dealing with that my whole life. And when you tell me I can't do something, guess what I'm going to do? All right? That's what my experience shows. And that's a character defect I've since worked on as well. But, at the time, I wasn't really ready to hear that. So it says, and these are really powerful paragraphs here. I love this because, I'm an alcoholic and I still make mistakes. Even 6 years sober, I'm making mistakes every day. And in how it works, it says spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. That speaks to me here in this paragraph, right? It says, suppose I fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Pretty logical, right? I'm going to make mistakes. Does this mean I'm going to get drunk? Some people tell us so there's your hysterical advice or hysterical thinking. But this is only a half-truth. It depends on my motives. I would definitely highlight that word. That is a big one. What are my motives, Brian? What are your motives? Why are you really doing this? And be really honest with myself about it. If I am sorry for what I have done and have an honest desire to let God take me to better things, mold that chosen ideal, I believe I will be forgiven. Anybody ever need forgiveness? And I will have learned my lesson. Now, the opposite side of the coin. If I am not sorry and my conduct continues to harm others, I am quite sure to drink. And a few pages back, it told me to drink is to die. So I better be pretty careful with that. I better be pretty in touch with my motives, right? I'm not theorizing. These are facts out of my experience today. I've seen this happen over and over and over again. You can write all the inventory you want. Write it every day. But if I'm not willing to let God mold me to a better ideal, if I'm not willing to make some changes in my life, I can write all the inventory I want. It ain't going to make a difference. Right? Inventory only works if I do something with it. Imagine you have a storefront. You're selling something. You inventory it. Only got one left. If you don't order more, you're going to run out and go out of business. Right? I need to make a change. I need to do something with that inventory. And the Big Book just told me what to do with it. Have God mold this new ideal and be willing to live up to it. It's now to sum up about sex, and it gives me an instruction for prayer. This is another thing I do every single day. I use this instruction in this next sentence every day. It says I pray for 4 things, right? I pray for the right ideal, which just told me on the previous page. I pray for guidance in each questionable situation. That's actually going to tie directly into the 11th step. I pray for, might need this. I pray for sanity. Please, God, I need a lot of that. And then this is a big one, because anybody ever heard do the next right thing in Alcoholics Anonymous? I don't know about you, but that used to really upset me because I don't know how to do that, man. Like, they kept telling me to do it, and I was like, well, I know what it is, but like, I don't seem to be able to accomplish it. Like, I know that picking up a drink is a bad idea, but yet I can't stop doing it, right? Like, I know that driving drunk is a horrible idea, but left to my own devices, I've done it 1,000 times over again. I don't know how to do the next right thing. Like, I know what it is, but I don't know how to do it. So here, listen to this instruction. The 4th one. God, please give me the strength to do the right thing, because I can't do it on my own. Never been able to. Not consistently. It says if sex or relationships are very troublesome, I throw myself the harder into helping others, right? So if I'm stuck in myself and I'm stuck in all this selfish stuff in my relationships, a really logical thing is go help somebody else. People that are new in here a lot of times think they don't have anything to offer. And I really try to encourage them. I was like, you have so much to offer. You don't even have any idea how much you have to offer. Share your pain. Share your experience. You'll help somebody with a lot of time in here. Imagine that, right? You can help somebody, like if you got 2 days, you can help somebody with 1 day. Show them how you got through yesterday, right? Talk to them how you got through yesterday. There's always something I can do to get out of myself, right? There's an old guy that came around here a long time ago, and he talked about pushing shopping carts, right? Push the shopping carts back into the stall, right? Do something for somebody else. Get out of myself. However I do that, get out of myself. Go home and do the dishes, man. Take out the trash, right? Clean up the yard a little bit, whatever. Do something to help somebody else. Do something for somebody else. That's what the big book just said. This takes me out of myself, and it quiets the imperious urge. When to yield would mean heartache, which for me would mean probably go back to drinking. That's what I've always done. It says I've been thorough about my personal inventory. I've written down a lot, so chances are at this point you might have written down a lot. And it's an open-ended a lot, you know. A lot could be a couple pages, a lot could be 10 pages. I really hope it's not a novel as thick as this book, because we might have a bigger issue there. But I've probably written down a lot. I've listed and analyzed my resentments. I've begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. That's understanding what it's telling me about resentments. They're going to kill me, right? They're not serving me at all. They're just going to kill me. I've commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. Now, 4-step promises. These are pretty awesome. Ask yourself if you need any of this. I have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill towards all men, even my enemies. Imagine that. I look at them as sick people. I have listed the people I have hurt by my conduct, and I am willing to straighten out the past if I can. In this book, I read again and again that faith did for me what I could not do for myself. I hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. And I just made a whole list of all the self-will that's been blocking me off from God. And hopefully I can see that by now. If I've already made a decision, my 3rd step, in an inventory of my grosser handicaps, 4th step, Ryan, you've made a good beginning. I love the big book, man. I do all this work. I've done all this, this painstaking effort in this 4th step. Big book says, good beginning, Ryan. That being so, you've swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. And then we move forward. All right, so that wrapped up the 4th step. Now we're going to see what we're supposed to do about that. And I'm going to talk about the packet really quick. Couple things. I put some stuff on here, and some of this isn't directly out of the book. Some of this is just my experience working with others. And there is some stuff that I've taken from the book and applied it. I gave a couple lists, one for sponsors and one for sponsees, about the 5th step. So, you know, the sponsee's job in the 5th step is really simple. I share everything from my 3-4 step inventories when I do my 5th step. That's pretty simple. For sponsors, I gave a couple instructions based on what's going to come later in the book in steps 6 through 9. So I'm not going to talk about the first one, this ask if anything the sponsee didn't write down. I'm going to go over that because that's actually directly from the book. When I listen to a 5th step, I list out character defects and amends that I'm hearing as they're reading this inventory off to me, right? Defects will show up, people, places, and things will show up that I might think they need to make amends to. Eventually, they're going to have to come to terms with that with God, but at least I can give them a list and help them on their way. Now, what I really want to talk about before we get into the fifth step is page 75. And we've been leading up to this for a while, and I want to talk about this first. The reason why is because page 75, and we'll get back to 72, but page 75 gives me the instructions for what to do after my fifth step. And this is really important, and I do this before I go through a fifth step with a sponsee, before we even set a time to do it. And because it tells me I need some time and I need a quiet place. Specifically, it's going to tell me I need an hour in a quiet place after I do this fifth step. So imagine, for me, I always give 2 to 3 hours to do a fifth step, depending on the size of the list, maybe more, maybe less. But I generally try to block off at least 2 to 3 hours to listen to what this person has to say. Then I'm going to tell them, you're going to need an additional hour on top of that to do what this is telling me to do. Because I haven't completed the fifth step unless I do this, per what the book says. Now, page 75, the last paragraph, that's what we're going to talk about. It has 8 questions, and they're in the packet, but I'll go through it. So it says, after I do my fifth step, I return home. Now, it says I find a place where I can be quiet. Maybe home's not a quiet place for you, and that's totally fine. Find a quiet place, like somewhere where you're going to be uninterrupted. Whatever that is for you. There's a lot of different places. Go be out in nature, wherever. You got a nice bench out on a hiking trail that's nice and quiet. Maybe that's a great place for you to do this. Whatever works for you. Carefully reviewing what I have done. So it says I find a place where I can be quiet for an hour. And my sponsor would say, Ryan, what does an hour mean? And I said, I think it means an hour. He's like, not 59 minutes, not an hour and 35, not 25 minutes, an hour. So I set a timer for an hour. It's going to be me and God in the big book for an hour. And we're going to go through some stuff together. It's going to tell me what to go through. The first thing, and this is pretty cool, right? Thank you, God, from the bottom of my heart that I know him better. I thank God from the bottom of my heart that I know him better. Just from reading that fifth step, one of the promises in the paragraph above, which we'll read in a little while, talks about the idea of getting to know God better. Taking this book, it's an important instruction. I'm going to need this book. This one. Not the 12 and 12, not anything else, not the California 4-step instructions from the internet, not Hazelden's book. And you can have all that, but I would make sure I have this one. It says, take this book down from my shelf, and I return to the page which contains the 12 steps. That's page 59, how it works. It's got all 12 steps outlined. Actually, the last 2 carry over to the second page. But anyway, I carefully read the first 5 proposals. So that's the first 5 steps. And I ask if I have omitted anything. God, please show me if there's anything that I don't understand in these first 5 steps. Is there anything that I left off? And as we're going to read on a couple pages previously, we're going to go through this directly. Is there anything that I held back when I was reading that inventory to my sponsor? Be really careful with that one. This is my last chance because if I move forward and there's something, I'm sure some people in here might have had this experience or know people that have, that one thing, that 2 things that I'm hanging on to, it's going to eat away at me. It's going to eat away at me. It's probably something huge. If I wasn't willing to share it, it's probably something enormous that I really don't want anyone to know. And if I don't share it, my experience is it's going to be the only thing I think about. It's going to trump everything else on that list of 100 things that I just read. I might as well have not wasted my time. Have I omitted anything? Rigorous honesty. That's what that is. All right, last chance there, right? So I'm building an arch to which I shall walk a free man. So it's all about freedom. I said that last time. I was like, I love doing the 4th step. It's all about freedom, right? This is how I get free of this stuff. Now, the questions. Is my work solid so far, right? So have I done a thorough job in the first 5 steps? Can I honestly say that? Have I done my best? Have I asked God for help and done the best of my ability with God's help in these first 5 steps? Only I can answer that. Now, as I mentioned previously, are the stones properly in place? That's a direct reference to steps 2 and 3. So it's telling me go back and take a really close look at steps 2 and 3. Are those properly in place for you? Ryan, do you believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity? Do you believe that whatever power you believe in can take you farther in every area of your life than you are today? Do you believe that God is everything, or is he still nothing? Right? Those are some questions I might want to ask myself in that moment. That's all from step 2. The 3rd step, am I convinced that my life run on self-will can hardly be a success? Better be pretty convinced of that, right? Do I believe that selfishness and self-centeredness are the root of my troubles? Do I understand the second definition of the alcoholic, which has nothing to do with alcohol? I'm self-will run riot, and I usually don't think so. That's what that definition is. So do I believe that? Am I willing to let God be my director, principal, and father? whatever my higher power is? Am I willing to let God be my director, principal, and father in that third step decision? And does that third step prayer have any meaning to me at all? Right? God, build with me, relieve me, do with me as thou wilt. Are my stones properly in place? Have I skimped on the cement put into the foundation? A direct reference to step 1. And this has been coming up a lot in the daily reflections, and the big book has a very clear definition of what the cement is. It's on page 17, and if you guys make a note of that back when we did it. The cement consists of 2 elements. There are 2 elements in the powerful cement that bind us in Alcoholics Anonymous. The first is my common peril, right? So am I an alcoholic? Do I understand what that means from the 2 definitions in the first pages, right? Once I start, I can't stop, and I can't stay stopped once I've stopped. That's kind of the physical part, the physical and the mental part. And the spiritual part is I'm self-will run right, and I usually don't think so, right? So am I clear on my common peril, right? Am I clear on what my problem is, what I'm up against? And for me, what that really means is, do I really think this is going to kill me? Do I think my problem with this is big enough that it's going to kill me if I keep screwing around? The second element in that powerful cement is a common solution. The big book describes this as a way out on which we can absolutely agree. And I've talked about this at length. One solution. The common solution. The solution in the book. Am I clear on what that is? And at this point, it's ask God for help, right? Apply these spiritual principles. That's what the big book's telling me to do. I'm the problem, I can't be the solution. My life is unmanageable when I'm the one managing it. I need a higher power to do that for me, drunk or sober. The bedevilments on page 52. Really important exercise for me to understand what that's about. Right? Am I having trouble in personal relationships? Can I not control my emotional natures? Am I a prey to misery and depression? Can I not make a living? Am I full of fear? Am I unhappy? Right? Do I have a feeling of uselessness? Do I feel like I can't be of any help to other people? I need to ask myself those questions. And it doesn't really matter how long I've been sober. Like, all that stuff can be true on a daily basis if I'm disconnected from God. So, common solution. And then it says, if I tried to make mortar without sand, which basically means if I left anything out, right? Am I trying to get away with a half measure? After the 5th step, like, it's about to get, it's kind of scary to say, but it's about to get really real, because when we get into step 9 today, we're going to start involving other people in this process. Up to this point, it's between me, my sponsor, and God. Haven't really needed to involve anyone else, right? I'm going to start bringing some other people into this equation, and if I'm messing around with half measures, that could get really ugly. That could get really ugly. So I better be clear. Am I good? And the reason I do this review is, like, some stuff comes up, right? Well, that's why I have a sponsor. Call them up. I don't feel good about this, right? Something's wrong. Something's off. I feel like I'm missing something here. Perfect. Let's go through it again. Let's do this. Let's do this thoroughly and honestly. Let's not just say, yeah, I'm good. Wrote some stuff down, shared it with you, everything's good. Meanwhile, like, the most important thing that I need to get rid of is just sitting back here. And now we're going to talk about that. So that 5th step review, take an hour. I haven't completed the 5th step until I've done that. So it's a really important process, and it'll set me up for success as I move forward. So back to page 72, and I'll go from the 5th step from the beginning. So again, just wanted to highlight that so that we know that I need that time after I read this inventory. It's an important thing to plan for that and make time for it. Don't want to rush it. Don't want to have a 5th step and then go straight to work. Yikes. That'd be pretty rough. Or go sit in traffic, go to the airport or something, go pick up your kids from school. Get pulled over in the school zone for going 25 and a 15 or whatever. Anyway, never done that, by the way. But, chapter 6, Into Action, page 72. It says, I've made a personal inventory. What should I do about it? I've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with my Creator, and discover the obstacles in my path. I have admitted certain defects. I have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. I've put my finger on some weak items in my personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on my part. The chapter is appropriately named Into Action. There's 7 steps in this chapter. Steps 5 through 11 you will find in this chapter, and they're all about action. Action that only I can take. It says, when completed, will mean I have admitted to God, to myself, and another human being the exact nature of my defects. This brings us to step 5, or the 5th step. It says, this is perhaps difficult, especially discussing my defects with another person. Probably haven't done that before. Anybody ever lied to a therapist before? Yeah, I might mention that here. All right, so the chances are that I haven't discussed all of my defects with anybody. Chances are I probably haven't even looked in the mirror and discussed them with myself because I really don't want to see that either. So I think I have done well enough in admitting these things. So that's the fourth step, right? Like I put this stuff down on paper, me and God. I think I've done well enough. And it says there's doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. That would be fifth step. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reason for why I should. The best reason first. This might be important. If I skip this vital step, I may not overcome drinking. So it just told me if I don't do the fifth step thoroughly, I'm probably going to drink again, and it already told me to drink is to die. Time after time, and this is going to be on your packet. This is that question I said I was going to come back to. This is a very, very important sentence here. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Another way to say that is my take it to the grave stuff. Everybody's got them. Everybody's got at least one. And like I said, it's usually the deepest, darkest secret that I have. It's something I don't want to share with anyone. It's something I'm ashamed about. It's something that scares me. It's something that's probably kept me up at night, had nightmares about, I've been running from my whole life. So I handed my inventory to my sponsor when we sat down to do a fifth step. And he looked at it. Oh, this looks good. Threw it to the side. And then he asked me this question. He said, Ryan, is there anything you didn't write down on this four-step inventory? Before we even talked about a single thing on that list, he asked me, Ryan, are there certain facts about your life that you're trying to keep to yourself? I had two. And, I've come a long way with this, and I really believe that God stepped in there, just like he's done it so many times in my life, because I had this urge, and I knew I had a choice, right? As that crossroads, the book talks about the crossroads, right? I can keep on going, doing the things my way, go on to the bitter end, blotting out the intolerableness of my current situation, and the two things that I didn't write down were pretty intolerable, quite frankly, right? Or I can accept spiritual help. In that moment, I asked God for the strength, and I told my sponsor those two things. One was very sexual, and one was very violent in nature. Both happened a long time ago. One when I was pretty little, and one when I was living abroad. And they made me cry. Like thinking about it, I cried. We actually did my fifth step at this bar and restaurant next to the Fellowship Club in Scottsdale. And my sponsor was eating fish and chips and listened to me cry for a couple hours. He's an interesting guy, but yeah, it was so powerful that I cried as soon as the words were coming out of my mouth. Can you imagine if I decided not to share that day? I couldn't even get the words out without tears just pouring down my face. So do not keep anything to myself. And as the sponsor, I wrote that under the sponsorship instructions because if anyone has an experience listening to this stuff and working with people, everybody's got this stuff. Some of them is, the levels of it, I don't like to do comparisons, right? Some horrible things have happened to people. Stick around long enough, you might hear some horrible, unimaginable, deplorable things have happened to people, especially when we involve drugs and alcohol. We tend to make some pretty bad choices in that arena. But I gotta get free of it. Gotta share it with somebody. And if I'm not comfortable sharing it with that person that day, I better find somebody that I am comfortable sharing with it. And the book's gonna suggest some other people that I might want to talk to. But I gotta get rid of that stuff. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, I've turned to easier methods. The easier method would be just simply not talking about it, right? That's the easier method. Almost invariably, I get drunk, or they got drunk, right? That's powerful. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. So the book just said, until I share everything, it ain't clean. It's got to be everything. Half measures avail me nothing. Anything less than a full measure is a half measure. They took inventory, but they hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought, italicized text, they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all, italicized text, their life story. Big Book uses big words. All is a big word. All is not 95%. All is not 70%. All is not even 99%. All is all. 100%. 100%. I need to tell somebody all my life story. And it just told me if I don't do that, I'm getting drunk, which might kill me. So take that for what it's worth. Now, the second actor scenario in the book, I mentioned there was two. This is the second one. So the first actor scenario is from step 3, where I'm the actor trying to play the director, the screenwriter, the producer, the janitor, the whatever, right? I'm trying to do it all. And I don't know how to do any of it. That's the ironic part. Now, here, I'm a different type of actor. This one, I'm much more of like a traditional actor. I'm putting on a show. And I've heard this exercise a lot over the years. Some people have their sponsees read this actor scenario to a bunch of people. It's pretty cool. I personally didn't do that, but I've found these next 2 paragraphs to describe me to a T when I'm in self-will, and especially when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous. Listen to how Ryan was when I got here. More than most people, I lead a double life. I'm very much the actor. To the outer world, I present my stage character. This is the one I like my fellows to see. I want to enjoy a certain reputation, but I know in my heart I don't deserve it. That hurts. That was 100% me, right? And that was some guilt and shame I was living with every single day. I was full of it. Right? I was telling people, I'd sit at the bar and tell them I'm a doctor, and sit at the bar and tell them I'm a freaking lawyer, and like all this stuff, right? I'm so important. I have all this money, and like meanwhile, I'm like selling stuff I shouldn't be selling out the back door to homeless people, and I'm hanging out in like these crazy places, and I'm in a bar that's a dungeon at 10 a.m. when it's beautiful and sunny outside in Southern California. But like I'm telling everybody it's all good. Life's great, man. I'm doing this because I want to be here, not because I have to be here. Wasn't the truth. The inconsistency is made worse by the things I do on my sprees, right? So stick around. You might find out just how full of it I am. You'll see me on one of these sprees. Coming to my senses, I'm revolted at certain episodes I vaguely remember. Anybody ever been revolted by an episode they vaguely remember? For me, I lived in an age, like by the time I was really out there drinking and doing my thing, like these guys were a big part of the world. So for me, looking at that the day after, or coming out of a blackout and seeing what I had done on my phone, the messages and the calls, the bank account, right? The credit cards, email, like social media, like all of it. I was pretty revolted, and I barely remembered any of it. These memories are a nightmare. I tremble to think, listen to this. This is a perfect example of just how selfish and self-centered I was, and can be still on my own power. Because consider this sentence. I tremble to think that someone might have observed me. Notice how it doesn't say, I tremble to think at what I did, because I don't really care what I did. I'm so selfish, I just didn't want you to see me doing it, right? That's what I'm really cared about, my image, right? Like, I don't care that I've done all these deplorable, horrible things like that. As long as nobody saw me, it didn't happen, right? Like, that's the thing. This is how sick I am. I don't want people to see it, even though it's the truth. As fast as I can, I push these memories far inside myself. Pour another drink on it, right? Pour another drink on it. Just bury it down a little bit more. Pretend it didn't happen. I hope they will never see... this one hits. I hope they'll never see the light of day. There are so many skeletons in my closet that I never wanted to see the light of day. I didn't want to have to sit across the table from my mom and admit exactly what I was, which I ended up doing when I made amends, right? I don't want my sister who looked up to me to know the kind of person that I was, right? I don't want people that I care about in this world to know exactly what I was. And I just drink more and I try to bury all that down and hope it never sees the light of day. Meanwhile, I'm making it worse every single day. I'm under constant fear and tension. Guess what? That makes for more drinking, right? Anybody had experience with that? It's a vicious cycle, this actor scenario. The more full of it I am, the worse it's going to get, right? And so the big book's going to probably tell me, maybe get really honest, Ryan. Maybe get really honest with God and your fellows. Get really honest with your sponsor first in this step, and that might help. Now it's going to tell me about how I lied to doctors. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know of a few instances where we've given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom told them the whole truth. So, how sick am I? I'm going to spend all this money on a therapist, and I'm going to lie to this person, and then when it doesn't work, the advice they're giving me based on a lie, then I'm going to go get mad at them, because they're wrong, and I'm either going to try to find a new therapist, or I'm going to ask for another prescription, or I don't know what, but I'm going to do all this stuff all based on a lie. I'm nuts. What am I doing? Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one, right? So I'm not honest with anybody, but yet I'm expecting you to be honest with me. Small wonder why many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery. Imagine that. Now, big sentence here. How about this? I must. Here's one of those musts. Might need to do this. I must be entirely honest with somebody if I expect to live long or happily in this world. It's time to stop being full of it, Ryan. It's time to be honest. Or, I'm not going to live long or happily in this world, but the opposite of that is also true. If I'm honest with somebody, I can expect to live long and happy in this world, or at least happy for as long as I am living in this world. How free do you want to be? That's all I need to ask myself. How free do you want to be, right? How free do you actually want to be? Rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons. I always make a note of this because this doesn't get talked about a lot. Anybody have experience reading their fist up to more than one person? If you haven't, this is a cool instruction. I have read my fifth step with a lot of people over the years. I don't generally read it from the podium when I'm speaking to a huge audience. There's some stuff on there I probably wouldn't like the entire room to know. But there is things that I've shared with people and some examples, right? It's funny because the previous page just told me something I've done wrong, so I took that advice pretty seriously. I went and read my fifth step to my therapist. I let this guy know exactly what's going on, for the first time. And wouldn't you know it, he was able to help me with some stuff. That was pretty cool. Imagine that, Imagine that. So I read it to my therapist. One of the most powerful things I've done, and I've done this over the years, I'm a man. I've had issues in relationships with women in my life. I have a lot of women in my family that I care about. I realize I don't really know too much about being a woman in this world, so I have read my fifth step to multiple women in this program. Women that I trust, women that I work with in the program. And they have read their fifth steps to me, not because I made them, they chose to, but very powerful experience, right? Learned a lot about relationships in doing that. Learned a lot about some things that I had never really considered before. I read my fifth step with one of my sponsees at least every single year. As they're doing theirs, I'll do an inventory and do a fifth step with them. I've read my fifth step list to other people in my sponsorship lineage, right? Again, this is like my inner circle, people that I trust and that I love in this program. People that I go to for help, they might need to know about me. So person or persons can be a powerful experience, but at least get it off my chest with somebody. I'm not going to go through a lot of this next part. It's going to tell me a lot of different people that I can read this to. It's going to suggest an obvious one, someone that's bound by, confidentiality, like a priest, right? So a priest is someone, if you got that really dark thing, maybe go tell them if that's your thing, especially if you're part of that faith. Says such part, I'm going to skip down and I'm just going to go a couple lines here to the middle paragraph, the last couple sentences. It says, such parts of my story I tell to someone who will understand yet be unaffected. The rule is I must be hard on myself but always considerate of others. So understand yet be unaffected. I'm going to give you an example of what this looks like. I have a lot of sponsees. A lot of them have been through a lot of stuff that I've never been through. A perfect example is I've sponsored some men who are veterans of our military and have been in foreign wars and been in a combat zone. I have not. I do not know what that is like, and it'd be very wrong for me to assume that I do. So what I suggest with them is, yes, we'll read your fifth step inventory, right? But take that, especially that part, and go read it to a guy in the program that has been to combat. Go talk to another vet about that, right? Understand yet be unaffected, because I don't understand that. It's kind of the same thing. Like, I don't have any kids. I sponsor men, and I have a couple of women that I work with closely that have kids, right? I I don't know what it's like to have kids. I know what it's like to be a shitty kid. I'm good at that. But I don't know what it's like to be a parent. So yes, we'll read our fifth step inventory together. But then I'm going to encourage them to go find another mother in the program, or go find another father in the program to read that inventory to, and see if you can get some perspective from them. Right? Understand yet be unaffected. Powerful instruction. Then it's going to give me this paragraph at the bottom of 74, notwithstanding the great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, and maybe one so situated that there is no suitable person available. This is one of these times, and as we get into some of the later chapters, I'm going to point this out a little bit. The book was written in a time where there wasn't an AA meeting on every corner, right? We live in the valley, thousands of meetings weekly. If I'm using this as my reason to not do a fifth step, I can't find a suitable person, go to some more meetings and find the person, right? Am I willing to go to any lengths? In the 1930s, they're talking about one meeting a week. They might have to drive hundreds of miles. That's a logical thing. I might not be able to find somebody suitable to hear this. But in today's world, that's a cop-out. That's just a cop-out. I mean, it's a cop-out. So do I want to be free or do I want to die? I'm sure I can find someone if I'm willing to just go to a couple more meetings. If I don't like anybody in this room, there's some meetings down the street I can go to, maybe find somebody there. So again, don't use that as an excuse. All right, page 75, and I'll take a couple minutes, and then we'll have a break. I just want to get through the last two paragraphs of this fifth step, and then we'll be into 6 through 9. It says, when I decide who is to hear my story, I waste no time. Urgency, right? Urgency. We've talked about that a lot. The big book talks about urgency. Wasting no time means right now. I've written an inventory and I'm prepared for a long talk. I explain to this person, especially if it's someone not in the program, if it's someone that is, like my sponsor that has done this before, chances are I don't need to explain a lot. But I explain to them what I'm about to do and why I have to do it. Why do I have to do it? Because I'm going to die if I don't. The big book told me I'm going to die. I should realize that I'm engaged upon a life and death errand. That's big language. Fifth step's life or death. Most people approaching this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by my confidence. I can say that. I've listened to a lot of fifth steps. It is an honor and a privilege when someone trusts me enough to share that with me. At this juncture, I will say I do offer something here. Because this isn't about me as the sponsor. It's definitely not about me. It's about this person and them living or dying. So I say this to everybody I work with. I said, look, if you're not comfortable sharing everything on that list with me, and you're not comfortable doing this at all with me, maybe I'm not the right sponsor for you, right? I want you to live, so let's find you somebody that you do trust and that you do want to work with, and I give them that out. And over the years, I've worked with over 100, I don't even know how many people now. 2 people have taken that out, and both of them are still sober today, and I couldn't be happier for them, right? They are very different than me, came from very different walks of life, and I got to set my ego and my pride aside, right? I don't keep them sober. I'm not God. Here's your chance. I want you to live. So please find someone you can do this. Now I get the fifth step promises, and I'll end with these, and then we'll take a 10-minute break, almost a 10-minute break. I'll bring us back at 3:15. So it's almost 10 full minutes. I'll go through this quickly. Listen how powerful these are. This is why I do the work out of the big book, because I get these promises. I pocket my pride and I go to it, eliminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of my past. Once I have taken this step, withholding nothing, I'm delighted. I can look the world in the eye. I can be alone at perfect peace and ease. My fears fall from me. I begin to feel the nearness of my Creator. I may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now I begin to have a spiritual experience. Isn't that what I'm chasing? Isn't that what the steps are all about? The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. I feel I'm on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the Spirit of the universe. Let's take a break. We'll come back at 3:15. So, I'd like to start the next part of this session with the set-aside prayer that's on your packet. Because my experience, when it comes to these amends, I might need to set aside a lot of things I think I know. So, the set-aside prayer, after a moment of silence, it's on your packet. God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about the steps, the big book, my own recovery, and most of all you, so that I may have a new experience with the steps, the big book, my own recovery, and most of all you today. Amen. All right. So 6 and 7, we're going to go through pretty quickly. They are only a paragraph in the book. These 2 steps will come to life huge in the daily disciplines of steps 10 and 11. And this is where I'll give the plug for the 12 and 12. A lot of great stuff in the 12 and 12 on these 2 steps, step 6 and 7 specifically. So this is a big book workshop, so I'm not going to go into that. I'll talk briefly about these 2 paragraphs, but again, they really come to life in what I do on a day-to-day basis with these practices. So page 76 says, if I can answer this to my satisfaction, so what do I have to answer? The questions in the 5th step review. So if I can answer those questions to my satisfaction, right, then I look at step 6, really simply. So I've emphasized willingness as being indispensable. Am I now ready to let God remove all the things which I've admitted are objectionable? So at this point, my sponsor would have handed me a list of all these character defects. I'm going to review it, look at it. Do I agree with this? Ask God, is this me? I tell my sponsees, the list is between you and God. Add or remove whatever you want from it. At the end of the day, like it's your life. Here's what I heard when we did the step, right? No judgments. It's just, this is what I heard. It says, can he now take them all, every one? So that lets me know I'm an alcoholic. Only an alcoholic would want to hold on to some character defects that have been killing me, but maybe I do. Maybe I do. And so it says, if I still cling to something, I will not let go. Just like this is going to be the biggest instruction moving forward with everything in this book. These magical words, I ask God. That's a prayer, right? So if I don't have the willingness to let some of these character defects go, that willingness is not going to come from me. So I ask God. I pray for willingness, right? Because this stuff's going to kill me. Step 6, acknowledging the list, admitting I have these defects, owning it. If I'm willing to do that and I'm willing to have God remove them all, not saying he's going to do that today. I don't know if any of you have experience with this, but generally he doesn't take them all right away. Right? So then I'm ready for the 7th step. And we'll say this prayer together if you guys will. The 7th step prayer from page 76, another thing I do every single day. My Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. So the thing that I point out about that 7-step prayer is it introduces this idea. There's also an amen at the end of the prayer. So I'm going to talk about these 2 things. The first one is all of me, good and bad, right? God is everything, or he is nothing. So I'm not just asking God to remove my defects of character. I'm saying, God, you can have it all. Even the stuff that I'm probably good at. Like, I want you to be in charge of all of that. God, you can have all of me, good and bad. God becomes everything. The amen at the end of the 7th-step prayer is the culmination of that decision that I made in the 3rd step. The 3rd-step prayer doesn't have an amen at the end, right? The amen's at the end of the 7th-step prayer, because until I'm willing to let God have all of me, good and bad, I'm not really completing that decision of turning my will and my lives over to the care of God as I understand him. So how I learn to do that is in that process of the 4th and the 5th step, identifying all the things which I have found are objectionable, identifying my character defects, my fears, my failed relationships, and now I'm ready to let God have all of it. How I'm going to execute that? There's going to be some pretty good instructions in these next 5 or 6 pages, steps 8 and 9. Now, some things here. Steps 8 and 9. There is exactly one time in the book where 2 steps are introduced in the same sentence. And it happens right here. So what I've learned over the years is that the next 7 pages leading up to the promises on page 84, 83, 84, all of these pages are all related to steps 8 and 9. And I'll show you what I mean. So step 8, right, I make a list of all persons I had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. Powerful word, twice in the step. So we'll talk about that. The first sentence before it tells me steps 8 and 9, it says, now I need more action, without which I find that faith without works is dead, right? So in order to let God have all of me, good and bad, I'm going to need some more action. The big book actually defines faith without works is dead. If you're unfamiliar with that, page 14 and 15 in Bill's story, he gives a beautiful, beautiful definition of what faith without works is. And I'm going to read it for you guys. It says, my friend had, it's on the bottom of page 14 into page 15 if you want to follow along. My friend, which this is Ebby he's talking about, had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. So Bill's talking about the 12th step here specifically. Particularly, was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, that's amends, by the way. Work and self-sacrifice for others, right? Making people whole. He could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. If he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. Then faith would be dead indeed. Faith without works is dead. So that's what the big book is talking about when it mentions that on page 76. So again, just another example of do the work in order, right? Because now I get here and it tells me faith without works is dead. I'm like, oh, I think I read that somewhere in Bill's story, possibly. Anyway, so let's look at steps 8 and 9. I have a list of all persons I had harmed whom I'm willing to make amends. I made it when I took inventory. That's part of the 8-step list. The 4-step inventory, right? There's quite a few names on there that, maybe my sponsor wrote down when I was reading that 5th step, right? So I take a look at those and consider those carefully. Now consider there might be some names that weren't on there that I need to make amends to. And here's a perfect example of what that would look like. Anybody ever did something to someone that did absolutely nothing to them? Right? Have I ever harmed anybody that I don't really have a resentment against because they didn't do anything to me? I just treated them like crap, stole from them. It's possible. If it's not, I would probably ask God to show me some names. I actually gave you guys 2 prayers in the packet. These were given to me by a man who's been doing this a very long time. And the 2 prayers he showed me were, God, please show me all the people, institutions, and principles I know I need to make amends to. So maybe there's even some more clarity from the time I did my 4th step until now, and I got some other names maybe I need to write down. It's a good time to get that out. Second prayer, equally as powerful. God, please show me all the people, institutions, principles I don't know I need to make amends to. Like the ones I forgot in the blackout, the ones that I haven't thought about in 20 years, right? The really small, seemingly innocent ones. The little, taking the pennies out of the jar at the register, right? At the gas station or whatever, right? Stealing a pack of, chewing tobacco from the store or whatever. Man, I do these little things, I don't really think about it, but all that stuff is wrong. And then the book's going to talk about this idea of amends, and made a list of all persons we had harmed, became willing to make amends to them all. All is all. So I got to get to all. I subjected myself to a drastic self-appraisal. Now I go out to my fellows and repair the damage done in the past. I attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of my effort to live on self-will and run the show myself. If I haven't the will to do this, I ask prayer until it comes. Remember, it was agreed to the beginning I would go to any length for a victory over alcohol. So, this 8-step list, and why I say the next 6-7 pages are all about step 8 and 9, the big book's going to give me 6 different areas of my life to consider where amends might need to be made. And I need to be able to consider all of those and take into account what these pages are suggesting to me in order to make an accurate 8-step list. It's also going to give me the instructions on how to go out and actually make the amends in step 9. But if I don't consider all these areas, it's very possible that I'm leaving some things off my list. All right? And that can be a dangerous game to play. So let's see what the book says. It's going to go through 6 different areas. I listed them in your packet. Business acquaintances and friends, people I hate, creditors or people I owe money to, criminal offenses, domestic troubles, current and past, parents and children, so that's the family, right? It's going to talk a lot about some other domestic situations. So basically like my intimate partner or someone that I'm living with versus like my family. And then I put the list can be increased because, we can expand on some of those categories. But those are the 6 major areas that the book talks about. The book's going to give me a lot of direct instructions on what I need to do during this process. And I have a really simple job to do it and not really question it. So let's see what it says. Page 76, the last paragraph. Probably there's still some misgivings as I look over the list of business acquaintances and friends. So there's your first category, right? God, please show me all the business acquaintances and friends to whom I owe an amends or who I have wronged in some way over the course of my life, right? Ask God to show me, right? Chances are I'm not going to be able to make this list on my own. Friends I have hurt, I may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let me be assured, to some people I need not, and probably should not, emphasize a spiritual feature on my first approach. I might prejudice them. At the moment, I'm trying to put my life in order, but this is not an end in itself. Here's an instruction. My real purpose is to fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about me. It's talking about tact, right? I don't go as a reformer, some evangelist, right, to somebody that I know has religious prejudice or is probably a lot like me, maybe even at the time, right? I'm going to use some tact, right? How do I fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about me? How about I meet them where they're at, right? I meet them where they're at in life. I don't ask them to get to where I am or where I'm trying to go. I meet them where they're at. It is seldom wise to approach such an individual who still smarts from my injustice to him and announce I've gone religious. In the prize ring, we would call this leading with a chin. So again, it's talking about tact, right? I don't go in there guns a-blazing, right, trying to reform them, you know? I might want to use some tactfulness. Why lay myself open to being branded a fanatic or a religious bore? Here's an important instruction. I need to avoid this one. I may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. That also lets me know I may only get one chance at this. Right? I may only get one shot at this amends because chances are this person may not like me very much as it is. If I go in and make it worse, do some more harm, might not ever get a chance to do it. It says our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong, right? He's going to be more interested in my demonstration of goodwill than in my talk of spiritual discovery. So my actions are going to speak a lot louder than words. I do not use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God. When it will serve any good purpose, I'm willing to announce my convictions with tact and common sense. So there you go. Common sense and tact. I might need God's help for those two things. I don't always have the most common sense, right? It's not so common to me all the time. Now, the second category, right? So I've asked God to show me all the business acquaintances and friends, right? Who I'm going to make these amends to, right? Maybe they're all on my 4-step list. Maybe they're not. Need to get to all. Second, maybe the hardest category, up for debate, that's an opinion. How do I approach the people that I hate? So I need to make amends to the people I hate too. And maybe they have done more harm than I have done him, so chances are these people are going to be on my resentment inventory. Though I may have acquired a better attitude towards them, so that's telling me to use some 4-step principles before I go do this amends. Like part of the preparation in the 8th step and becoming willing to make amends to them all is I need to get free of some of this resentment before I go try to make amends to this person. Like, I can't go in there with, I hate you and I want you to die, right? But hey, I'm also here to admit I was wrong and I really want to try to make it right. It's like, use the 4-step principles of the sick man's prayer and the angry man's prayer. God, this is a sick person. I know they're a sick person. Please show me how I can be helpful. Please save me from being angry. And say that prayer as many times as it takes to get that resentment out of my head and start to see this person for who they are, a sick person. Right? It says, nevertheless, with a person I dislike, I take the bit in my teeth. It's harder to go to an enemy than a friend, but I find it much more beneficial. I love that sentence. My experience with the steps and this whole program is the harder it is, the greater the reward on the other side. The harder it is, the greater the reward on the side. 4 steps not easy. The rewards of it are phenomenal. Making amends ain't easy. The rewards of it are unimaginably good. If you haven't done it, try it. It says, I go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit. Not going to be able to do that on my own. God is going to show me how to do that, if it's ever going to be possible. Confessing my former ill feeling and expressing my regret. Now we get some direct instructions about how I'm going to make these amends, and this could also be part of the preparation as well as the actual making the amends. Because for me, part of the 8-step process is I'm going to write this stuff out, right? I'm going to have some planning about how I'm going to do this amends before I actually go do it. The book's going to tell me some things I might want to consider. First one, this is huge. Under no condition do I criticize such a person or argue. So I might need to pray for some patience. Right? Chances are these people might say some things that I might not like. The book just says under no condition, Ryan, whether they yell at me or not. Under no condition do you criticize, Ryan. Do not criticize such a person or argue. This isn't a discord. Right? It's me admitting I was wrong and I'm going to give them a chance to air some of their grievances. Simply, I tell them I will never get over drinking until I have done my utmost to straighten out the past. So that's a great way to break the ice. Why am I reaching out to this person I haven't reached out to in 20-some years? Or haven't talked to in a long time, or we both said we'd never see each other again, right? I'm going to reach out in a helpful and forgiving spirit, and I'm going to tell them I'm sober, and I'm trying to straighten up my past, right? And I'm trying to do my best to do that, and that's why I'm reaching out to you today. I'm there to sweep off my side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until I do so. Another important instruction, this kind of goes with criticizing, right? I'm not here to tell you what you need to do, right? I'm here to clean off my side of the street, focusing on my wrongs. Your faults, his faults, are not discussed, so I stick to my own. And listen to these instructions. This is big, right? This is all stuff that I pray for, right? Because I'm not going to be able to do these next few things on my own. If my manner is calm, frank, and open, I'll be gratified with the result. If my manner is not calm, frank, and open, I'm probably going to be horrified with the result. So take that into consideration. This is all part of this preparation. I don't go into amends half-cocked. I don't just go out there and start firing off, hey, I screwed up. It's all about me. I got to get free of this, so you got to hear what I have to say. That's not what it is, right? Calm, frank, and open. Frank is to the point. That's a big instruction, right? This isn't for me to just, here's 100 things that I did wrong. It's like, no, I'm going to get to the point. Like, here's the big thing. Like, you and I know it. I'm here to admit it. This is what I did wrong. Boom. It says in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own fault. It doesn't promise that, but it says sometimes that can happen. So feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. I have so many experiences with that, both with myself and with the people that I sponsor. Powerful stuff there. Feuds of years disappear in an hour. That is powerful stuff. Only God can accomplish that. I can't do it. Rarely do I fail to make satisfactory progress. My former enemies sometimes praise what I'm doing and wish me well. Occasionally they will offer assistance. This one applies a lot more to me. It should not matter, however, if someone does throw me out of their office. I have made my demonstration, done my part. It's water over the dam, right? So I'm there to do my part. How they react, what they do, what they say. I'm not in the results business, right? I'm in the action business. God's in the results business. It's up to him. Maybe they react negatively, and maybe that's exactly what I need to hear. But I do not criticize, and I do not argue, and I do not lash back at them. Yes, Maggie?
Okay, I want a little feedback. So I have a mixed bag. Some people will say you should go back to your former boyfriends or girlfriends and talk to them, and some say stay away. Don't ever go near them. Have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the book, we're going to talk about that actually. In the book, yeah, give me a page or two, but let's talk more about it after too.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so most alcoholics owe money. Now we're going to get the third category. It should just, all alcoholics probably owe money. It's like real. I do not dodge my creditors. That's an important instruction, right? I'm done dodging people. I owe them money. Some of the most powerful instructions in these amends come in this paragraph, because this is the one that's it's interesting. It says, I tell them what I'm trying to do. I make no bones about my drinking. They usually know anyway, whether I think so or not. I'm not afraid of disclosing my alcoholism on the theory that it may cause financial harm. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise me. Here's the really important instruction. I arrange the best deal I can, and I let these people know I'm sorry. My drinking has made me slow to pay. I must lose my fear of creditors, no matter how far I have to go, for I'm liable to drink if I'm afraid to face them. So, arrange the best deal that I can. I'm selfish, and I'm self-centered, and I have a problem with ego and pride, and I want to take a big bag of money and just drop it on this person's desk, or the IRS's desk, or whatever, the credit card company's desk, or throw it at their front door as I drive by. Like, that's what I want to do. The reality is I probably don't have the money to do that, and if I try to do it that way, I might not ever have the money to do that. And what I'm doing is taking the easier, softer way and say, I'll get to that amends when I have the money. How about this? I call them all, like today, and I arrange the best deal I can with them all. Hey, I owe you this much. I'm an alcoholic. I've made some horrible decisions. Here's where I'm at in life. This is how much money I have. This is what I'm able to pay you now, and I'll start sending you money today in this amount. Here's what I'm able to do. I'm going to try to arrange the best deal that I can. Personal experience, credit card companies will love to talk to you. They just want their money. The IRS, who I owed more money than I thought I would ever make in a lifetime, they were happy to hear from me as well. They just want their money. So for the first 4 years of my sobriety, every time I got a paycheck, a huge chunk of it went to the IRS. It was deducted out of my account. And every time I got a bonus, I used that money to pay them and other creditors that I owed until they were all paid off. And it was a long, painful process, but I arranged the best deal that I could, and I stuck to it, and I did the honest and right thing. And when I finally had a financial windfall about 4 years into my sobriety, I wrote a very large check to the IRS after arranging the best deal that I can, and that amount came down to something that was still a lot, but a lot more manageable than it was. And by the way, the deal that I arranged, they forgave a lot of the interest that had accrued while I was not paying, and they got back down to the principal amount, which was doable. And then they started charging me interest from the time I said I could pay. So that was the deal, right? And I had to be not afraid to ask for that. But anyway, so I finally wrote the check, and I remember saying, as soon as oh, it's a mythical, I didn't write the check, I paid it online. But anyway, when I hit the button, like, to send it away, like, I thought I was going to feel horrible because I'm like, damn, I just gave away a lot of money. I could have bought something cool with that. But I felt so much relief. So much relief and just peace and comfort. And I'm not looking over the shoulder like, here comes the IRS again. Like, I'm not worried about what's in the mail because it was always from them. It's always a bill. You know, all that ended that day. And it started with arranging the best deal that I could. And I encourage everybody to do the same, right? That's what the big book says. I'm not going to have this big bag of money to go drop on somebody's desk. That's an alcoholic's way of thinking, right? An honest person's way of thinking is, I'm going to arrange a payment plan. I'm going to stick to it. It's going to suck. They're going to take money from me every month. But what my sponsor helped me realize was, Ryan, he's like, Ryan, it's not your money. It's not your money until they're paid. Like, you stole from them a long time ago. You've owed them this money for how long? You didn't pay taxes for 10 years? You're lucky you're not in jail, dude. Like, just pay the money. So I arrange the best deal I can, and I do it. And I ask God to remove my fear of doing that. Now, talk about removing fear. Perhaps I have committed a criminal offense. Anybody ever committed a crime? Just kidding. We won't have to admit it in this room, but we'll just assume maybe it's possible. Which might land me in jail if it were known to the authorities. This is another story. There's a story mixed in here, and it's a powerful one. It says I may be short in my accounts, unable to make good, right? I've already admitted this in confidence to another person, but I'm sure he would be imprisoned, I'm sure I would be imprisoned or lose my job if it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Consider that for amends. Anybody ever had an expense account at work while they were drinking? Maybe spent a little bit on that account that wasn't for company purposes. That's an amends, a financial one. Just throwing that out there. Just saying. That was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, most of us have done that sort of thing, so you're not alone. Guilty. Maybe I'm divorced and I'm remarried and haven't kept up with alimony. No one's ever done that, right? No one's ever been late on alimony or child support before, right? She's indignant about it and has a warrant out for my arrest. She's allowed to do that. It's legal. That's a common form of trouble, too. Although these reparations take innumerable forms, here are some general principles which we find guiding. You might want to pay attention to these general principles. Reminding myself that I've decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience, right? So any lengths means any lengths. I ask that I be given strength. Remember, that was from the fourth step, too. God, give me the strength to do the right thing. That was one of those 4 things in prayer every day from page 70. And direction to do the right thing. Again, this is from the 4th step. This isn't necessarily new. It's just reiterating it. No matter what the personal consequences may be. So the right thing might hurt a little bit. I may lose my position or reputation or face jail, but I am willing. I have to be. I must not shrink at anything. How free do you want to be? How free do you want to be? You want this thing hanging over your head for the rest of your life? Every knock on the door could be that person coming to collect, or the law enforcement to come pick me up for this thing that I know that I owe that I refuse to pay, and I'm too scared to pick up the phone and try to arrange the best deal I can. Right? Usually, however, other people are involved. So this is an important instruction, and this is what I really touch on this, because on the 9th step, Like I said, we'll talk about 8 and 9 together. The 9th step talks about not harming others, right? I need to consider what others are. Are there people currently dependent on me? I'll give you my situation. My father passed away. When he passed away, I made a promise that I would take care of my grandmother. So she lives with me. She's dependent on me financially, physically, like all this stuff. And if I'm going out to make amends, and an amends I need to make could potentially land me in jail, right, or something like that, I need to consider that that has a really negative impact on her life right now. And it's not me being selfish saying I don't want to make the amends. I'm saying I'm willing to do it once she's not dependent on me, right? So that would be something I do later. Luckily, I'd made all those types of amends before my grandmother was in the equation, but she's someone who's dependent on me. It's like the book's going to give this example right now. So let's see what it says. It says, therefore, I'm not to be the hasty or foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save myself, right? So I'm not trying to hurt other people just to save myself. That would be very selfish. A man we know had remarried because of resentment and drinking. He had not paid alimony to his first wife, right? Imagine that. She was furious. Couldn't imagine why. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He commenced our way of life, had secured a position, and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, here I am. We thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. So he's got some new people that are dependent on him, and they were very innocent when this old thing took place, right? So I have to take that into consideration. We suggested he write his first wife, admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. There's 2 times the big book says ask forgiveness, right? One is from God in step 11. I ask God for forgiveness each day because I make mistakes. And here's the other time. And the amends aren't necessarily about forgiveness, but in this case, it's saying to ask for forgiveness. It says he did, and also sent a small amount of money. Arrange the best deal that I can. I owe her money. I'm not sending her a letter with no money in it, right? I gotta think about this. Be tactful. He told her what he had done, or what he would try to do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted, so own it. Say, I'm ready to do whatever you want me to do, right? Of course she did not, and the whole situation has long since been adjusted. She just wanted her money. Imagine that. I just got to do the right thing and agree to the contract that I agreed to and pay the money. Huge instructions, top of page 80. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, I secure their consent. Ask permission. This is going to go to what Maggie just asked about, so I will talk about this in just a second, and it plays into some relationship stuff too. If I have obtained permission, have consulted with others, ask God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. Asking permission includes relationships, and we're going to talk about those amends next, so this is a perfect time to discuss this. If I have a long list of people from my old relationships, the most important thing I need to do before I do any of that is ask the permission of my current partner, right? I'm not going out making do a bunch of amends to women before I ask my girlfriend, my wife, my current partner about if she's okay with me doing that. Because what I do if I don't is I'm putting her in harm's way. And that's not right, right? I ask permission from her or him or whatever. And then if I get that permission, then I move forward. Without that, I'm just being selfish. It's all about me. Like, especially if she says no, and then I go do it anyway, right? That's pretty selfish and self-centered. So yes, I need to make these amends, but God will provide the time, and maybe time goes by, and I present to this new person in my life that I'm trustworthy, and I can go make these amends, and she's got nothing to worry about. Maybe that takes some time, right? Maybe it doesn't, but that's also God's way of speaking, of saying, like, I'm willing to consider everyone in this equation, and before I go start making these amends to my exes or whatever, I'm going to ask permission to my current partner. Think about it. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a barely hated business rival. Giving him no receipt for it, he subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis of discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. He felt that he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him, right? What right do I have to involve people that are dependent on me now just to save my own skin from things I did in the past, right? That's not a new behavior. That would be an old behavior of me just thinking about myself, right? Oh, I need to get free of this. I'm going to do whatever I need to do. Well, no, I need to take some other people into consideration as I do it. How could I possibly make a public statement exonerating its rival, right? After consulting with his wife, here you go, and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. Listen to this instruction. I saw I had to place the outcome in God's hands, or I would soon start drinking again and all would be lost anyhow. So if the drastic step is indicated, I need to put the outcome in God's hands. I'm in the action business, not the outcome business. Right? If I've consulted other people, if I've asked permission, if I have talked to God about this, right? If the direction is so abundantly clear and the only thing standing in the way of it is me, I need to get out of the way. I need to get out of the way. God, give me the strength and direction to do the right thing. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quickly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he is one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. And like I said, it'll lead us into our next category of amends, the domestic troubles. Right? So consider all these, God, please show me all the domestic troubles I have had over the years and all the amends that I owe for that, right? Perhaps I'm mixed up with women in a fashion I wouldn't care to have advertised. I doubt if in this respect alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations. Yeah. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, uncommunicative. How could she be anything else, right? So the big book's telling me to start to consider, the implications of my actions, right? Of course these people are fed up with me. Look what I've been doing for a really long time. The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself, commences to look around nightclubs or equivalent for something besides liquor. There's a lot of things you can find in a nightclub besides liquor, actually. Perhaps he is having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand. What are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful, especially if he's married to a loyal, courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. There you go. If I'm sure my wife does not know, should we tell her? Interesting instruction here. Not always. If she knows in a general way, we've been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know, or he will want to know, either way, who the woman or man is, and where he or she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person, right? So there's the instruction from the book. We feel we ought to say we have no right to involve another person. But again, it's between me and God and that person. So at the end of the day, that's where the direction has to come from. But the big book did just give me this idea again and again. I can't put other people in harm's way when I'm doing this. It's probably the most important part of this amends. When you think about amends and they think about so many things, for me, the big book tells me over and over and over again, think about other people, Ryan. Think about other people. Think about the damage you could do here just trying to do the right thing. Again, I'm trying to do the right thing, but what are my motives? Are they selfish because I'm just trying to get free of this stuff, which is important, obviously, but at what cost? Right? I'm not here to make things worse for other people. I'm sorry for what I've done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. There may be justifiable exceptions, so there you go. There's the out. And though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this the best course to take. Our design is not a one-way street. It is as good for the wife as it is for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not necessarily name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. So again, Big Book just gave me some guiding principles there. Take those into consideration. And then here's maybe the biggest guiding principle, the next couple sentences. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. Here you go. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It's between me, the other person, and God, right? Anyone else is an outsider. That includes my sponsor. That includes other people in Alcoholics Anonymous. That includes my therapist. That includes my family, right? So again, I'm not to be the arbiter of anyone's sexual conduct. I stay out of relationship controversies. Let God be the final judge, right? Pray about it. See what happens. If the step is indicated, I have to take it. It may be that both will decide the best way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we are dealing with the most terrible human emotion, jealousy. Ooh. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk a face-to-face combat. Now, as we're wrapping up these pages, this is where we get into some other sticky stuff here. It's going to suggest something, and this is going to tie into this idea that I hear in Alcoholics Anonymous all the time about living amends. I'm going to say something about living amends. first, I'm going to say that yes, I do them. I have done them over the years, right? I've been in a process of living amends to my mother for 6 years, my sister for 6 years, my father until he passed away. All these people that I did horrible things to for a really long time, but I did not do a living amends in replacement of a direct amends, and that's what the big book is going to tell me here. And a lot of times that living amends can be a big cop-out in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's how I take the easier, softer way, and we're going to talk about it right here in these next couple of sentences. This is why I'm bringing it up. So be really careful with the living amends. If we have no such complication, there is plenty we should do at home. Listen to this sentence. Sometimes I hear an alcoholic say, the only thing I need to do is keep sober. Certainly I must keep sober, for there will be no home if I don't, but I'm yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years I have so shockingly treated. A living amends of just not drinking and staying sober is not an amends, especially to these people. I sat across the table from my mother, and we cried it out. It was brutal. It sucked. But at the end, the relief was unimaginable. And yes, I continue to make a living amends by honoring what she asked me to do in that moment, which was be a good person. That's what I want for you, Ryan. Like, that's how you can make an amends to me, is be the son that I raised you to be, not be an asshole that you've been for so long. Excuse my language. I sat across the table from my dad, did the same thing, right? And then I live it out. That's a living amends. Just saying I'm going to stay sober and now it's going to make everything right with these people. That ain't it. Big Book just said that's not enough, right? So keep that in mind. Passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Amen to that. Had this not been so, many of us would have had no homes today. Perhaps we'd be dead. Now it gives me this beautiful little paragraph here, and I love this because this is what it is. This is me saying a living amends is enough. This is what it sounds like. The alcoholic, me, I'm like a tornado roaring my way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. I'm guilty of all of that. I don't know about any of you, but all of that is me. I feel I'm unthinking when I say that sobriety is enough. There you go. Second time it's said that. I'm like the farmer who came out of the cyclone cellar to find my home ruined. To my wife, I remarked, don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? Like tornado's over, we're good, right? No, I gotta rebuild. I got a lot of reconstruction to do. Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead, Ryan. I must take the lead. Here's an important instruction. A remorseful mumbling that I'm sorry won't fit the bill at all. On your packet, I gave you guys some instructions for amends. I'll let you read through them. They're pretty self-explanatory. It's just what I've used over the years. I talk about the medium that I do it on. I use note cards. I separate them into categories. I wrote out some instructions that are directly from the book. And instruction 2 on the last page says, I was wrong, not sorry. That's from this sentence, right? This idea of I'm sorry. Anybody ever said they were sorry before and then did the same thing again? Oops. So my sponsor asked me to consider how many times I'd said sorry to some of these people. I don't know if there's a number big enough for that. I'm sure numbers are infinite, but I might need that, right? How many times have I said sorry? Did it again? 1 million? I don't know. So sorry is not going to be good enough. I say I'm wrong. It says I ought to sit down with the family and frankly, listen to that. I have to sit down with the family. By the way, this is the last category. We talked about domestic troubles. Now we're talking about the family. That would be category 6. I ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as I now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. So I sit down with all of them individually and I clear this stuff up, right? And I clear it up. I try to. I make my best effort to clean up my side of the street. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that my own actions are partly responsible. So I clean house with the family. Here's your second instruction for meditation. I told you there'd be 3. The third one's going to be on page 164. I'm not sure we'll actually get to that page as I usually run out of time, but just so you know, it's on page 164. So we had page 69, meditation, 83, meditation. So I ask each morning, that's like on awakening. It says each morning, not each morning when I feel like it, not each morning during the week. each morning as in every day, in meditation, that my Creator show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. I ask for those 4 things in meditation every day. The spiritual life is not a theory, italicized text. I have to live it. How I live it, how I learn to live this spiritual life, how I learn to let God have everything good and bad, how I learn to turn my entire will and my life over to God. I learn all that going through this process of amends and sitting across from the table from these people and learning to be patient and tolerant with people I hate. Learning to be loving and kind and be honest and say I was wrong and not sorry to the people that I love and I've hurt the most. Being willing to make those financial amends to people I've been running from for years, right? Doing the next right thing. I finally learned what that is in the amends. With God's help, I can do it. Unless my family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, I think I ought not to urge them. So I'm not here to be the reformer, and I'm not here to tell them what they need to do. I shouldn't talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Again, this is the second time it talks about this idea. My behavior will convince them more than my words. Bless you. So that's where the living amends can really come in, right? Because that's what needs to happen. My behavior needs to change, and it needs to continue that way. And if I do, then that's what's going to convince them. Like, I sat across the table from my mom, and we hashed some stuff out, and I cried, and she cried, and we had a beautiful moment, and I felt like God was for sure there. It took her 5 years to trust me after that. Right? And I went to my sponsor every year on my birthday, actually, and I'd be like, man, another year, and she still doesn't trust me. And so he would do this, and he'd be like, Ryan, how long were you drinking and lying to her? And I'm like, a long time. At least 20 years. I was 30 when I got sober. I'm giving myself the first 10. I don't think I was that bad. I was really good. And then he's like, how long you been sober? This might take some time. This might take some time, man. But I make the amends and then I live it. Right? I must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Now the last paragraph, and we'll close this up for today. Pay attention to this sentence. There may be some wrongs I can never fully right. That does not say there may be some amends I cannot make. There's a difference there. And it's going to tell me a couple examples about what this might look like. So a wrong I can never fully right means maybe I did something that's just unforgivable, right? I still got to do my best to try to clean up the past, but this person might not ever forgive me for that, and I got to be able to live with that, right? I mean, I've certainly done some things, right? And it is what it is. I do not worry about them. If I can honestly say to myself, I would write them if I could. One of the instructions on the list I gave you guys on the packet was, what can I do to make it right, right? And if they tell me never to talk to them again and leave them alone and never come around them ever again, well, that's what I do. That's what I do. I honor that request. Some people cannot be seen. I send them an honest letter. That would include people that are dead. That's also an amends that I can make, right? Probably a wrong I can never fully right because the person is dead. But some of the most powerful experiences I've ever heard in this program are people taking a letter to someone that passed away before they got sober or before they got to this amends process and read the letter at the gravesite. Here's what I did wrong. I was wrong, right? Admit it in front of them and God in this space. If you haven't done it, try it out. It's a great way to get free of some stuff, people I thought I couldn't get free of it from. I send them an honest letter. There may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, but I don't delay if it can be avoided. I should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble. Those are some nice instructions. I learned how to do that during the amends with God's help, right? I learned a lot of humility, that's for sure. Without being servile or scraping. And then the last sentence before we close up today. As God's people, as a child of God, as God's people, I stand on my feet. I don't crawl before anyone. So what that tells me is I don't argue with these people. I don't criticize them. But I'm not going to sit in their office and let them call me a piece of you-know-what for an hour and just turn me into this horrible, person. Whether I was or not is kind of irrelevant. I will just calmly say, I understand where you're coming from, but unless we can talk sensibly and, have an honest conversation, I'm just going to leave. And I understand why you're upset, but I'm not going to be tortured right here, right? Something like that, word it however you want. All right, and then we'll start next time with the 9-step promises. It's a great place to leave off. And again, if you're in the room, remember we're going to do the raffle right now, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, so stick around if you want. Let's close it up with a serenity prayer, guys, before we get out of here real quick, okay? Shh. Let's have a moment of silence and the serenity prayer, and we'll close it up. And then we'll turn it over to Patty in the back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, guys.